Hello and welcome everyone to another video in which I'm describing some sound design stuff. I made a sound again that I consider to be cool, so let's just listen to a fraction of this beat and then I will tell you which sound I mean. So I am talking about the guitar, and you probably already guessed it because I will probably put it into the video title or something. The thing is, I am rarely using heavily distorted guitars in my beats, so I'm actually quite proud that I kinda nailed it in this track. So let's choose a top-down approach for this. So the guitar is in this project. And this project has a group, choked G, G is for group, and it contains the crisp git, the Neuro git, and the lead. And yeah, this is basically the sound that we are following now, except for the lead synthesizer. Let's not talk about this one. Even though, yeah, it makes a substantial addition to this sound. It definitely fits to this layer. Anyway, so what I did was I put the note receiver on this track, which is a Bitwig device for getting the MIDI notes from another track, like in this case the bass line, because the bass line has this thing going on. And yeah, the guitar as well, and the lead is slightly different, so if it wasn't in this group then it would have a different melody because of that. So yeah, you can figure out a melody, but just by using notes from a different track to apply certain effects, it can change how the melody feels with the music. For example, here I played a long note, but the fact that the bass lines have pauses makes the lead also have pauses, which is pretty cool in this case, but it could have been offsetting. The first thing to talk about here is actually a mental thing. If you're writing a melody like this and only putting it into a group afterwards, just like I did as well, then the first moment it will be confusing because it does not do what you intended it to do anymore. But in such moments you just have to be open-minded so that you can be open for the new mistake that made it better, you know? So next up is the chain, and this is basically the reason why I even put everything in the group. What I have in here, I should start with Enveloper because that's the easier thing. Enveloper is just a plugin that gets MIDI input, it gets it from the note receiver, and well, on note ons the envelope starts, and then on note offs it ends, and then it will be used. It will be multiplied with the signal so that you get gain when the envelope is there and lose gain when it's gone, you know? So this alone already adds these breaks. A cool little side feature of this thing is that you can also add a bit of decay and sustain to it to give a little bit more transient energy to a signal that does not have it yet. You can also use that as a trans gate. Now, Rift Filter Light, as I've said in a bunch of other videos, is my favorite filter, and it's used here on the cutoff and the resonance with this ADSR modulator. So basically, if I did not have Envelope over here, then it would still make a pretty similar effect just because of this cutoff. Now you might say, okay, but then if I just wanted to have this fancy filter resonance sweep thingy going on, then why not just go deeper with the cutoff? Well, the reason is if you make too hard modulations, even rift filter will create some very annoying bubble sounds. And yeah, that's just something that is always the case when you're using heavily automated filters. So that's even if the filters are designed for fast modulation, like here, it is not something that you can just turn off completely. And then there is a little sidechain compressor compressing from the kick, the typical sidechain thingy. The kick is here. So, well, nothing special here. Now let's just put these aside a little bit. We have this lead. And it's basically just synth 1. In synth 1, if you want to use synth 1 to make heavy leads, then it can make sense to add an LFO that is very fast, like the first knob is the speed, but then you shouldn't turn up the depth a lot because it becomes audible very quickly. And also this is a very unnatural curve for a vibrato, so it's really perfect for such a hard sound. And yeah, then I used this second low pass filter that the developer added later on, because it just sounds much nicer with a bit of resonance dialed in. But the most important thing when making a hard preset patch in synth 1 is to use one of the 3 distortion thingies, and they are sorted by how hard they distort. The first one is one with no low end. It's kind of soft guitar-ish tone. The second one has a lot of low end, but it still sounds rather clean. And the DD, whatever DD stands for, it's just crunching the thing extremely. And even though these controls don't have nice labels, they are very intuitive to use. The first one is just how hard you should go into it, and the second one is sort of the resonance at which it's the frequency at which it resonates most, which is basically some sort of tone or vibe control. Also make sure to always use phase, because if phase is turned to 0, then it will use continuous phase, and that's not as hard as using a fixed phase. Now the second thing I did here was using a clipper. I should turn off all these effects in order to show you. Now clipper. Well, I don't have to say anything about that. Clippers just add nice crunch. OTT. Okay, that actually did not add anything in my opinion. I don't know why it's still here. I will not mess with it because the mix is pretty good at the moment. Now I used Ozone Imager just to mindlessly blend dial in some stereoness. I think that works well with this plugin. Don't hate me for that, it's cool. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the crispy guitar. Now a lot of people will be surprised, hopefully, because that will make the video much more interesting. But I actually use this plugin for that. And I usually always tell everyone, don't use this plugin in a foreground way. Use it for background guitars because it can sound rather unnatural. But I think in this case, I found a way to use it very prominently in a cool way. Now, how does it sound without the effects? Yeah, so it does sound unnatural without effects. So that is basically how everyone knows this plugin. It is currently, I should say, just so in case you have this plugin, you know what to do. Put it in guitar mode, and then every note from somewhere here until C4 is for melodies and harmonies and blah blah blah, what you want to have. You don't even have to have split up notes like I have here, because the rhythm is done with this stuff up here. This describes which kind of strum is used. You see, so if you had multiple notes in here, you could also make arpeggios with that. But that was not needed right now. Now, alright. Then I put Boogex on it, a free amp. And Boogex has this very peculiar workflow where when you dial in something harder on this pre-EQ, then it will sound less nice on that frequency. And I wanted it to sound nice on the mid-range and on the low end, so I turned these down. And I turned up the high end just to make it even more clear that I want mid-range and low end. And or actually low mids. Yeah, that's more like low mids, not low end. If I'm seeing the range here, well, I did this by feeling, you know. Then I dialed in drive. I chose the standard configuration of distortion algorithms, and did not change the equalizer a lot. Then it's always fun to just go through all these impulse responses and find one that fits to your vibe. I did that and chose for one of those that sound a little bit brighter, because most of these are very dull. I did not use the reverb in here because I wanted to have a dry sound. Then I used this new Phaser Plus module that was added to Bitwig in the last update, in the last substantial update, and it sounds pretty cool, but I'm using it very subtle here. If you have headphones on, then you can probably hear that it's mostly in the low mids, a little bit of stereo-ness, wobbliness, so that it's kind of breathing. Then in Pro and Beam, yeah, because of this one note that goes da 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 on this da note, there is a weird resonance. So I have put that down here. And also I wanted the mid-range to just go a little bit up with some upwards compression, upwards compression, right. I like this workflow of adding volume to quiet sounds rather than dipping the volume of loud sounds. Even though the same effect can be done that way. Then I added Spectra just because I wanted high-end boost. Yeah, that's not too special. Now I actually turned down the stereo width a bit that was created by the phaser. Now, listening to this in isolation, it would make sense to leave the stereo field big, but I also have this Neuro Guitar sound in here, and this one is really wide, so there was no need to have this wide anymore, and in the context of the whole mix, it just made more sense to have the strong guitar in the center. Now let's listen to the Neuro Guitar. This is going to be interesting. So first of all, the meaning of the Neuro Guitar is to just play the same stuff as the crisp guitar, but with a different sound. To just add a crispy extra layer to it, you know, but it does not have notes, as you can see. And the reason for that is because it uses the note receiver from the bass notes. And yeah. And then, starting from there, we have this little chain. So the idea was to use the vocoder, the built-in vocoder from Bitwig, to just to basically just create a sound first of all. So as a modulator, we have the crisp guitar pre. I think it's the pre one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So the guitar goes out and it does not only go into its own FX chain, it also goes to this vocoder, but dry. And because dry is a little bit less fancy, I also put ODT here. And then there is also a carrier, and the carrier is the bass line itself as a sound, not as a note. And yeah, that is what creates the sound. And then there's also a modulation going on here with a tempo sync LFO on the formant. And that creates this kind of motion. And I cannot really explain the other settings that I chose because I mostly don't understand what's going on here and just find it really cool that this is here and that it has a cool workflow that kind of explains itself without needing to, without requiring to understand it technically, even though it would be cool to dive deeper into that. Now this tempo sync LFO is also on this phaser. Or more like phaser style filter in Rift. This time I used the spread now because I wanted to add more stereoness than there was already. And at that point we already have a really cool sound. Let's turn off the other things. Of course, in such a situation, first thing to do is always ODT to get back with the nice sounds. Then I think I just wanted to make things a little bit more uniform with this multiband compressor that I put after this multiband compressor, because you cannot have enough multiband compressors. And then with the equalizer, I just made sure that it does not interfere with the bass line. And I also dipped some side channel on this very characterful peaky valley thing here, because that sort of sounded good in the mix. I cannot really explain this decision, and you know, that was one of these decisions where you just have to be in the middle of the process to understand it. The one of these magical moments. And it's cool to actually capture one of these on camera, not exactly in the moment, but just to recap that and just to remember how that happened. And I wish I could explain it, but I can really just recap this feeling that it really made sense in the mix to not have it too wide there. But it would probably make sense if I was thinking about it a little bit harder. Then I would probably find a reason that I was subconsciously using for that. And here's the sidechain compressor. And it's currently not doing anything because we have this on solo, but if we're playing this with the guitar, I just wanted to make sure that the Neuro Guitar, even though the Neuro Guitar has a lot of the low mids energy of this layer of sounds, I did not want it to go completely berserk on the bass. So I just used Soothe to let the crispy guitar duck the Neuro Guitar on its resonances, which works perfectly. And this is how I created this fancy guitar tone that does not sound completely natural, but it does sound like it could fit in different kinds of rock contexts. One thing that I really don't know is what kind of genre this even is, what I did. I mean, it's sort of the tone is like a rock track. And I was a bit inspired by a track by Metric, even though that is more like a dream pop. But it also has one track where the bass line does this motif. And it also reminds me a little bit of dubstep. Not because of the drums, but because of the sounds, the way the drums are mixed with a lot of crunch, and there are also neuro sounds in it like that, and a bit of orchestral stuff. I have no idea what this is, but I really like it, and that's why I made this video. See ya.